Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Good evening, everybody, and we'll move forward on the agenda. Those of you who are interested, we have copies of the agenda and some other information that we're going to be talking about this evening. So why don't we start with a round of introductions. Roger, would you start?
Yeah, Southwest Bristol.
Sherry Salomon, resident. Sorry. Sherry Salomon, live in Goose Hollow.
Michael Mahaffey, also Goose Hollow.
Melanie Yu, also Goose Hollow.
Liz Paris, Goose Hollow.
Tiffany Hammer, Goose Hollow.
Eric Simon, Goose Hollow. Also, if I see some new or fresh faces here. If you're interested in becoming a member, we have applications up front, no charge to join, although most of us work for tips still, right?
Cookies.
So
I'll give you a
let's
tip
go.
right now. Roger's mic wasn't on. The rest of you sounded pretty good.
Oh, they
Is it not on? No, you're correct.
It's on now.
It's on, it's just not very loud.
You're hearing me?
Yeah, I think so.
It doesn't sound like it's on to me.
I can hear it.
Liz?
Well, the difference is noticeable. The rest of you, I can even hear you doing your small talk.
Yeah.
Maybe we should close the doors so that, because
Oh, there's Cal.
there's a kitty bounce in the hallway.
We have one more board member joining us.
Hello there, Cal.
So before we go to the audience, Cal, you want to introduce yourself also real quick? Cal Toth from Goose Hollow. Okay, great. Can we ask you guys in the audience to identify yourself also?
My name is Kathy Hello. Resident. I'm new to Portland.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Michael Lees, I'm a homeowner in Goose Hollow.
Annie Meharry, Goose Hollow.
I'm a Boston Northwest County. John Whipple, resident.
I'm sorry, we couldn't hear you. Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Eric Alstrom, 15 years, Goose Hollow.
Welcome.
I'm Liz Fixie from Goose Hollow.
And Liz, and I see a few more familiar faces back there. Dwight, you want to introduce yourself?
What you just did. Dwight Terry, I'm the MAC consultant for the MAC trustee for the club.
Mary Fetch, MAC, Community Relations.
Molly Gill, Gymnastics and Dance. I'm here as part of the Leadership Development Training.
And Steve.
And one more.
Goose Hollow.
Great, welcome everybody. We actually had a couple of speakers who were supposed to join us and they pushed off until next month, so we don't have any guest speakers. Unless there's anybody, Mary or others, Dwight, if you have any updates or anything you want to give us an update on.
Roger's raising his hand.
Roger.
I was just wondering if we could add 2 items to the agenda. First of all, unless I missed it, I'd like to see us have a short discussion of the Code 3.96 proposed changes. Every other
Yeah, I think that's on everybody's mind.
In Portland is sort of dealing with this right now. We don't need
Yeah.
to take action necessarily, but just to talk about the status, upcoming matters, possible actions. And secondly, a very small matter, I'd like to suggest updates to the webpage for the articles of incorporation and the bylaws. And we can talk about that, both of those under new business, I'm sure.
Or should we talk about that when we get to your bylaws report? Is that...
Well, it's not about the bylaws, it's
Okay,
it's
all right,
already
then.
something that's happened.
Okay, I just put those on the 2 new business, 2 items for the new business then.
Yeah, that's all. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have any other comments or questions or announcements?
Steve, Danny will be here, and so, the heritage tree is on the agenda, so
Yeah.
you can ask him any questions. But he's not, oh, there he is.
Yeah.
He's coming.
There's Daniel. Okay, great. All right, let's move on to old business and board emails exchanged this month. Anyone on the board who needs to report an email that was relating to board business that should be disclosed. Now's your chance. Thank you, Kel. Anyone? The only thing I could mention is we had some interactions on the Restore Oregon appeal, which we're going to get to and discuss in more detail. I don't think there's anything confidential in the emails that we had. I emailed to Peggy Moretti to ask for some clarifications and a couple of other things that I think we're going to get to in our discussion. Any other comments or disclosures for the board? Hearing none. Let's move on to, is there any other old business? Because that's all we have on the agenda at the moment. Whoa, sorry. That's what happens when we try to crank it up a little too much. Okay, now, in new business, Sherry, we have the Hoyt House Heritage Tree application approval. You want to give us an update on that? Maybe ask Daniel?
Yes, Steve and Daniel did a lot of work to fill out the application, which will go to urban forestry, and we are hoping that everything gets approved. We sent it to the board. Hopefully you had a chance to look at it. Steve and Daniel took measurements, they wrote a history, they filled out the application. It was really a big deal to do. And Daniel's here to answer any of your questions that you might have about this, the Hoyt House tree, which we are hoping will become part of the Heritage Tree Program. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
Yeah, Melanie, would you want me to grab the?
You just went up here.
Okay.
Oh, no, I just have a question. How did the owners feel about your efforts?
That's the big thing that we need to vote on. We haven't approached the owners yet. This whole proposal is that for it to be considered an Oregon Heritage Tree, the owners have to sign off and have to officially sign off and sign all of the stuff at the bottom. But we tried to do as much work as possible to save them as much time and work. So all they have to do is just make the decision whether they want it or not. Mm-hmm.
Do you know who the new owners are?
Yes, we do.
One of the things is that we went to an open house, the McKenzie House, and the same people that the McKenzie House new owners have, the same restoration company was hired by the people that just bought the new Hoyt House. So my feeling is that there are people that are willing to go the extra mile and pay for all that extra money to make their house historically accurate, are just the kind of people that are going to want their tree to be recognized. And it will only improve their property value. So I don't see any loss for them. So I'm hoping it will come through. And Daniel and Steve learned a lot, so if there's anyone else that has a potential heritage tree that they think should be recognized in Goose Hollow, to let us know so we can pursue that as well.
Right, and the other thing I would say is 2 pieces of information we are lacking is their email and phone number. So if anyone, let's say, lives in Kings Hill and knows the people or for some reason has developed a relationship with them, we would be really grateful to get their email and phone for the purposes of contacting them, in addition to approaching them in person. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Steve, why don't you get up?
Oh, when Daniel brought the issue forward,
Speak up, Steve.
either at the last meeting or the one before, Tracy had mentioned about writing a cover letter that would go on top of the package saying that the Goose Hollow Foothills League Board endorses it. So it would give a lot more weight than just Daniel's letter. It would say that the GHFL elected him to go forward with it. So I don't know what decision has been made yet by the board to write the letter or approve it.
aren't you guys going to be contacting the owners as the next step? Isn't that the next thing that needs to happen?
Yeah. Yes, but we need to have a vote for that cover letter before we approach the owners to put all, to stack all the odds in our favor of them saying yes. Because we want them. But the big challenge right now is figuring out how to be heard.
So what, I didn't realize that you guys actually want the board to vote on
Excuse
something.
me.
We really need to see a motion and see exactly what you wanted us to say.
We had brought this up at one or two previous meetings, and that before a motion was going to be put forward, perhaps today, was for Daniel to do his due diligence and get all his ducks in a row, which he now appears to be. So the next thing would be for someone to propose a motion for our board to endorse what they've done and to go forward in terms of contacting the owner.
So we're
Whether
just
it's by-
endorsing.
Right, whether it's by, since he doesn't have the phone number or email, it could be by regular letter or registered letter. And it had been brought up at previous meetings that once the letter and all the materials, an application were in order, to then come before us and for us to either endorse it or not endorse it or whatever the case might be, so.
Well, that's straightforward enough. I mean, if anybody wants to move to simply endorse the work that's been done, we've all seen the.
Well, I'll put forward a motion that the Goose Hollow Foothills League Board endorses the letter and application for the Hoyt tree or the specific address to be sent out with the support and understanding of the Goose Hollow Foothills League, and that obviously it's up to the owner to make a determination.
Is there a second on that? Melanie seconds. And any other discussion on that before we?
Well, the only other thing I'd like to say, to me, it's a win-win situation to the extent that they'll either acquiesce and say, let's go forward with it, or they'll say no, and we're no worse off, or the tree is no worse than it had been previously. It is a pretty magnificent looking tree when you go by the place.
Yeah, Melanie?
So, if it turns into, it gets approved to be a do the owners still have a say, because it's on their private property, of if they need to trim it for safety reasons or for aesthetic reasons?
Yes, they just, I'm not sure totally how it works, but they should have a say, because part of the Heritage Tree Program is not just saving it, but making sure that the tree gets properly maintained. So I'm sure that there are all kinds of processes in place that they can go on how to address those issues when they come up. I mean, every tree needs its own form of maintenance and other stuff, and so I'm sure that they have processes and protocol in place. I think you can count on that.
Who pays for, what's it, for instance, who pays for that?
Who pays for it? I'm not sure. They certainly don't need to pay for us to submit the application or anything like that. The Oregon Heritage Tree has a board, and they decide whether to accept it. It also seems like it's part of the process. Once we get the properties, that they'll talk to the owners too, and they'll try to persuade them why they should have the tree. And I'm sure during that time they'll have opportunities to ask any questions and vet any concerns that they might have, as well as just trying to understand the process. And so they definitely try to talk to the owners about the benefit, why it's in their self-interest to save it.
Aren't they required to sign, or they can choose to sign or not?
Yeah, they definitely have the choice to whether to sign or not. In fact, if we don't get their signature, it's a no-go, because because it's on private property, the Heritage Committee won't review it unless they know that the property owner is on board and has signed and stuff. So that's what we're really That's really what all of this preliminary work I've been doing with researching the story, following the city, to trying to create as persuasive argument as possible for them for why they want should sign. So everything we're doing up at this point is not so much for the heritage tree, but for the benefit of the owners, and also as part of my strategy, is that I felt like it would also increase their chances. I'm sure they're very, very busy people that not trying to do anything that could create extra work or it requires them to put any time or energy into it. So we wanted to do as much heavy lifting as possible, and all they would have to do is just read it over and sign. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're welcome.
The other thing I'd like,
It's under the jurisdiction of urban forestry.
Yeah, it's under the jurisdiction of the Heritage Committee, the Oregon Heritage, under the jurisdiction of Urban Forestry of Portland, too.
also, Dave, who's going to be giving the Goose Hollow Heritage Tree Tour of Portland, has already used this tree on his tour before and was hoping that someone would nominate it, but unfortunately the Urban Forestry can't on their own nominate it. It has to come from a citizen who lives in the neighborhood. That said, just because a tree gets nominated, it doesn't mean automatically it's going to be accepted into the Heritage Tree Program, and they reject most of them. And he said unequivocally that everybody in their urban forestry wants this tree. They want it to be in their inventory.
Great. Any other questions, comments? Let's call, oh, sorry.
I was just wondering what the provenance was. What kind of tree is it?
Can you use the microphone just because we want to make sure it gets recorded and everything?
My name is Doug Cook. I've lived in Goose Hollow for a long time. I just wondered what kind of tree it was and what its provenance is. Does it have a history?
Yes, it does. First of all, it's a sequoia tree. The same type of sequoia tree like they have in Sequoia National Park. I did some research. It's not a redwood. It's a redwood sequoia. It's a sequoia. It's a giant sequoia. It may be one of the highest. It actually has a higher than the heritage tree that's in my parents' backyard at Park Place, which is already a sequoia in a heritage tree program in our neighborhood. And in terms of the history, Hoyt, as you know, the Hoyt Arboretum is named after the man that lived in that house in the early 19th century, and he and his family built it. I think he was the son of like a shipper or railroad. I have all of that documented in there, and his wife was considered one of the most outstanding women of early Portland, and they were children of pioneers and shipping, and so basically there's very good evidence that tree was dates back to the time of the house. I found evidence that the heritage trees, the sequoias were among some of the first types of trees to be planted in the Kings Hill. The Hoyt House Mansion is on the National Register, as well as the surrounding neighborhood as a whole historic district. And yeah, so there seems to be very good evidence that the tree is a good 100 years old or so, and dates back to when the tree was planted. The fact that it was sort of at a really weird angle, that even has historic values, because a lot of houses in Kings Hill, they put these were built on these raised beds, so the people in Victorian times could get the best views of the mountains that way. So a lot of that is, so it's not just that buildings in Kings Hill that are historic, but also the landscape architecture. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if somebody on the board could get to you all the information, if you want to pour over all the information I put together for the tree. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you know of any other trees that my fellows over here will help you, in getting that tree checked out.
The two on Vista, just up from Rogers in my apartment. The two sequoias just up on Vista from yours and my
Those
apartment.
are not sequoias, those are redwoods.
Redwoods, yeah.
There's only one variety of sequoia, Sequoia sempervirens, which is the ones that are famous in California for being bigger around than a car. Yeah, but those are redwoods.
Redwoods, okay.
I say let's go forward and vote if there
Yeah.
are no other,
Yeah, let's call the motion. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Cal, are you abstaining? Sorry, you're abstaining. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yeas and 1 abstention. Okay, let's move on because I think the next one might take longer. This is a very complex issue, lots of moving parts, and this is the very complex appeal of the Luba decision on the Chinatown spot zoning. Sherry, you want to give us an update on that and your motion?
It was printed.
It was printed,
It's right.
and talked to,
Yeah.
okay, the motion to direct the president to contact Peggy Morty of Restore Oregon and commit that the GHFL will participate in the amicus brief for their appeal of Portland Central City 2035 plan to the Land Use Board of Appeals, LUBA, in concert with the co-petitioners of the Architectural Heritage Center, the Oregon Nikkei Endowment, and Portland Chinatown History Foundation, Portland Chinatown Museum. The president will also convey that owing to other pending financial commitments, no pledge of financial resources can be made at this time.
So Tracy, who couldn't be here tonight, wanted to share some background. She was one of the people that wanted to see this brought to the board. Go ahead, Cal.
We need the second.
Well, are you making the motion now? Yeah, okay, so she's making the motion and Cal seconds.
Do you want me to read the background so that other people in the audience will know what's going on? The appeal covers, 1, the council's decision allowing extra heights for key blocks in Chinatown/Japantown, which appeared to violate the comprehensive plan policies, and 2, the city's violation of its own goal, 1 policy, and public participation plan that required that the community members had meaningful opportunities to participate in and influence all stages of planning and decision making. Restore Oregon believes the council sprung a major amendment at the May 24th council meeting, nearly 2 months after the building height had been addressed and resolved. Public testimony was closed, and the council refused to allow testimony on this surprise major amendment. If this decision is not reversed, it may become impossible for the Landmarks Commission to deny a project based on comparable heights. Furthermore, Restore Oregon believes that this ruling opens up the door, this is a quote, opens up to the door for City Council to hold a public meeting on proposed city legislation, then later make wholesale amendments to it based on corporate development lobbying and claim they fulfilled the public participation requirement because of prior hearings. This is one more way the voice of the neighborhood associations could be silenced in Portland, end quote.
So I'm going to read something that Tracy wanted to bring for the record. She emailed and wanted to put this on the record. Of course, when we do emails as a board, we don't want those to be private. We want to put those on the record for everybody, especially when this involves essentially deliberation, which is what this is. So I'm just going to sort of summarize what she has. There's a copy of it here if anybody wants it. GHFL colleagues, I wanted you to have some background info on the LUBA appeal. Since I'm on the board of the Architectural Heritage Center, I have some info that might be helpful. I'll have this printed out for the meeting. 1, this precedent threatens all historic districts. If heights in a historic district can be changed by a city council member who gets large donations from the affected developers, then that can happen in Kings Hill too. and so on. 2, this sets a dangerous precedent to reduce public comment and violates Oregon laws requiring public process. City bureaus and officials are required by Oregon law to provide for public comment and engagement before they vote or decide on policy changes that affect us. This dramatically increased height was thrown in at the last minute by City Council after public comment had ended. If this illegal maneuver is allowed to go unchecked, then every City Council member will slide their favorite projects in at the last minute to avoid testimony from the public, which would violate state laws requiring public ability to comment. 3, this is not bypassing neighbors. I was there at the City Council, Tracy says, and testified about the importance of the historic district preserving Chinese and Japanese history. I saw many neighbors from that neighborhood testify about the proposed heights before City Council unilaterally made the heights even higher. Chinese and Japanese property owners and businesses with long neighborhood histories were there and testified against the previously proposed even lower heights. 4, this is important to vote for regardless of who joins us. We will be joining our Northwest District Association neighbors, Restore Oregon, and other neighborhoods. I think the total was 6, by the way, total. Well, we would be the 6th if we join it. In voting to join the LUBA appeal, Restore Oregon has great respect statewide and is taking this step to protect all historic districts in the city and to protect citizen rights for public process through the state. I greatly admire NWDA's planning committee, who sees what others with historic districts in their neighborhood see, that this precedent could affect our historic district dramatically. I think, yeah. So that's enough. If anybody wants to read the rest of this, they're welcome to.
Michael, for the benefit of the newer people, you want to explain who Tracy is?
What's that, Mary? Sorry,
Do you want to explain who Tracy is to the new people?
Swing to Tracy. Who?
Explain. She is. She's.
Oh, who? Tracy. Oh, I'm sorry. Tracy Prince is our president, who is unfortunately not here tonight, and she asked that this be read into the record, put into the record, and read. She obviously is for this motion, but can't vote for it. So she wanted to. Daniel.
Yeah, what's your name? Annie, who's sitting next to me, this thing with the microphone.
Can you, sorry. Daniel, can you go ahead and, just setting the volume?
Yeah, it's really hurting.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
That's a little tricky. Okay.
We're in the discussion period now? Michael?
Yeah, say again, speak up a little.
We're in the discussion period
Yes,
now?
we are.
Okay. To me, I look at it, obviously, the process is very flawed for what City Council did. And I'll say a little, and then I'll turn it over to Tiffany, who actually owns a business in that area.
Yeah.
I'm under the impression that the Chinatown Old Town Neighborhood Association has not weighed in one way or the other on this issue. And so whether we're sticking our nose under the tent, I don't know whether that's necessarily appropriate. I know I was at our recent, which will come up later, planning committee, where we had somebody talking about the heights that are going on in Kings Hill and how they've actually lowered some of them. So whether this is pertinent to us or not, I'm not saying yay or nay. I would suggest that since Old Town hasn't really weighed in on this, is to perhaps invite some of their board members to come to see us and explain their position on why or why not they either support or don't support this. This seems to have come out from Restore Oregon, and I'm not demeaning them in any way, shape, or form, but I think more investigation is needed on our part before we give any kind of an endorsement. And with that, I just turn this over to Tiffany to give a little bit of background, since she does have a business in that area.
Good evening. My name is Tiffany Hammer, and I'm a business owner in Old Town, Chinatown, for the last almost 20 years. So I do understand the area in terms of the struggle over there and also the minimal development over there. And I would like to give my perspective to you all tonight of what the challenges we face over there. As I also would like to recognize that I am a board member for Goose Hollow, and I highly respect everybody on the board, especially Tracy Prince, the president here, who has a great understanding of preserving heritage and culture in downtown Portland. But I also do want to bring about awareness that when I did see Restore Oregon wanting to talk to us about having Goose Hollow apply to be a part of the appeal process with them, and I would like to bring about awareness in terms of the fact that they're reaching out to neighborhood associations like Multnomah Village, Laurelhurst, Northwest District Association, Goose Hollow. I thought to myself, what about Old Town Chinatown's neighborhood associations? So I went ahead and picked up the phone. I called them twice this week, had a great conversation with them, and they wanted to bring about awareness that they're not completely aligned with Restore Oregon's goals. But they wanted to share that it is a complex situation down there. If you've been down there, it's not a black and white situation for appeal process. The appeal process for Restore Oregon is October 28th. And so they chose not to follow completely with Restore Oregon because they think that they understand the true needs of their neighborhood because they live it and work it and breathe it every single day. And so reaching out to other neighborhood associations that might not feel their struggle every day when they don't have minimal development like the rest of the city, and they have a majority of the affordable housing or halfway houses in all of downtown right there. And so they have a huge struggle that we may not completely understand. Businesses are leaving. And so they want, the neighborhood association is definitely invested in preserving the heritage and the cultural area because they recognize the tourism and also the history. But they also recognize they need other things as well. So the struggle that we see at city council down there is whether you go 350 high or if you go 100 stories high or whatever the number is, 125 or 200, it's to debate. And I would strongly suggest that we reach out to our neighborhood association because those are our allies, and they thoroughly, just like Goose Hollow understands what happens in our backyard, they understand what happens in their backyard. So I would like to see us reach out to that neighborhood because Pearl District reached out to them and chose not to vote quite yet to support Restore Oregon until they got all of the facts on the table. We have till October 28th to appeal. They are the neighbors of Old Town. They feel their struggles, they understand, and they're willing to listen a little bit more. Now, Northwest District Association went ahead and chose to jump towards Restore Oregon for those efforts, but yet they didn't phone call Old Town, Chinatown, Japantown to see how their association felt and what do they need. So I'd say humbly to this board here, I know time is of the essence. Our next board meeting is October 17th, correct? Do we have time to think a little bit more? Maybe reach out to our fellow neighborhood association to find out and gather more information, or do we need to vote tonight? And I do recognize I am a business owner in Old Town. I'm not a developer. I'd like to have my business that supports my family there for many, many years, but I also recognize it's really hard to walk on the street right now. And I'm scared to bring my children down there because they see things that they shouldn't see. And I think that we should bring about that association sees a bigger picture of crime, safety, livability, businesses, tourism, development, and also some of those development projects do provide affordable housing. And they also are mindful of bringing about shadows on the Japanese garden. So I'd like to say, I'd like to respect our fellow neighborhood associations and see what they have to offer us in terms of research and information. And also, I do know that they have many letters to the mayor's office and to the city council. And also, there's just a lot more research. Like I said, it's complex. And thank you so much. And I actually appreciate any board member that has feedback too, because I'm new to the board, but I'm open, but I'm also.
I'd like to add.
Yeah.
I'd like to add a fair amount. Number one, I think it saddens me that there are other neighborhoods, people in other neighborhoods that that want to push this increased height, which is already a great deal. But the major issue, and I think Tracy hits upon it, this is a dangerous precedent, and that the city council broke the law. I think it's important to understand that. And I'm in a group that meets one Thursday a month with Bud Clark, who's our former mayor, and I've gotten to know these people very well over a period of years. And one person I know very well is Chris Tobin, who was the chief of staff, and before that, before she became chief of staff for Bud Clark, under the Bud Clark administration, she was head of City Club. And after reading that, and I'd like to quote from her, after emailing her this: "Good Lord, what is wrong with the Portland City Council? Doubling the approved building height after public testimony is closed is not a little amendment. Someone should get the minutes from that council meeting and find out who submitted the amendment and what council members voted for it. I smell corruption." And one of the things that Tracy brings out in this one-page, very succinct letter entitled GHFL Colleagues is the fact that developers have had a disproportionate amount of say in what goes on with our city. And we are the little people. We are the little people, and we, in my case, we are making payments on a 1,175 square foot condo, and we don't have big bucks to literally fight City Hall over this. But one of the things that Daniel pointed out, by talking about the trees, these historic neighborhoods are very, very special, and they are under threat not only in Portland, but all over the country. You will find, and something probably Michael could speak to, that we're all in threat. And if they are allowed to just slip in illegally, double the heights because of a developer contribution or because they just simply want to do it, then there is nothing to prevent them from doing it in Kings Hill, which has these magnificent old homes in the Alphabet District. And I think, I personally do, I respect what Tiffany has to say, but I think, frankly, what a few people think, or even a couple of the neighborhood associations, what they think about the law and whether they'd like to bypass the law is completely irrelevant. I mean, by the city council breaking the law, they have violated us, and we cannot allow this precedent to stand. So that's what I have to say.
I just want to respond very quickly to both of you and also relate something some information I got from Peggy Moretti. I think that Tiffany raises two really important points that we need to take very seriously. One of them is that area does need development desperately because it's declining. There's huge problems with homelessness and crime and other things. And I think we all should acknowledge that and support that, frankly, and be a neighborhood that says, yes, we want development, but we want good quality development, and we want a public process that's functional, that's not bypassing the public involvement processes and so on. The other thing is, I'm really concerned about the question of whether we are bypassing that neighborhood association. And so I wrote to Peggy and I said, can you give me any background on the neighborhood association situation and why they aren't part of the appeal? Peggy said, I'm not sure what you mean. Restore Oregon and our co-petitioners are filing our appeal. Concerned neighborhood associations are joining in on the amicus brief. The trick has been to get neighborhood approvals before our deadline. So I think we're going to have to say yes or no. I don't think we can just defer this. And then I wrote back, I said, hi Peggy, the issue raised was whether the Old Town Chinatown Neighborhood Association supported the appeal or opposed it. We want to know the answer to that. I don't know the answer, so I can't defend the motion on that basis. So what she wrote back is, they are generally supportive of the appeal, and we were told they did not join as co-petitioner, which I take to mean they did not oppose it either, because they lack the funds to do so. They are okay with extra height on Block 33, but not with the rest of the district, and definitely don't like the way the public process was handled. So this is third hand. We haven't heard from anybody in that neighborhood association. But the information I have is that they've not opposed it, they've simply not joined the breed.
May I speak to that? So I spoke to them today, and Peggy, who is a supporter of Restore Oregon out of the Pearl District, their own neighborhood association, which she's a part of, decided to shelve the vote. And she is a strong supporter of it, but they chose to wait. And that in itself will tell you something. Because Peggy, she's great, but they're waiting. They're gathering more information because they're recognizing it is complex. Because if you treat each cultural district the same across Portland, it doesn't work. Each neighborhood is unique, it's different, it has different needs, just like Goose Hollow is different. So Restore Oregon can't treat us like a blanket, like across the board. We're gonna do something in Chinatown, but it's gonna be the same thing over here and there. We have elevation differences, we have different needs in the environment. So I think I'm humbly saying, let's gather more information if that's all right. I'd actually like to know what the other board members feel about this, because I do recognize cultural preservation. I mean, my husband and I, being a business owner down there, our neighbors gave us a gift, a big piece of Chinese heritage artwork, and left it behind and gave it to us because they decided to relocate out of the area. And so we're some of the few last businesses down there. And so it's sad to see when cultural leaves, and I want to preserve that. But I also know that we need changes. And if you look all over Portland, Chinatown's the only area that does not have development happening at all. And so and I think they want to say is don't. They're waiting so long for the changes, and this only makes it harder for them, and businesses are leaving. So we need to figure out a way to have public process, but also get what they need. So I could be rambling on, but what are all your guys' opinions?
Roger, did you have a comment?
Yes, I have some concerns and questions. Certainly, if this were position we were taking before City Council or the like, I would have no problem with this, because I agree that this is a precedent that seems to threaten all historic districts. And as far as the reducing public comment, well, I certainly agree with that, but that this is something that's more honored in the breach than the observance, because that's exactly what happened with Ogle's committee on the code change. It's like it seems like no one cares anymore about breaking this law. My concern is, I'm not a lawyer. Now, a friend of the court, amicus curiae, is something where my understanding is that you file a brief in a case before an appellate court. There's no brief here. It's like we are choosing to come on to something that hasn't happened yet. I want to see a brief before I vote for it.
Well, the motion is just to say we will do it.
Well, that's my next, let me finish.
We can, yeah.
Let me finish.
We can stipulate
Okay,
that.
so is the case then that if we sort of agree with this, that it comes back before us for final approval? Because this is like, approving a position before council or anything. And I don't vote for a
blank check.
Pig in a poke.
Right. Well, that maybe is something we could do. We could come back.
Well, either that, and I also look at it, there are several issues here. One is actually that you could go on the record in terms of the process was not followed.
Yeah.
Where the city council, approved this after all testimony and after everything had closed. So to me, that's something that can be addressed directly tonight if you so choose. And I agree with, Roger and Tiffany that we need to get more information before I feel comfortable voting in favor of this.
Well, are you comfortable voting for the motion as it's written, which is simply to say, yes, we want to join, or we are interested in joining, Because if we don't say at least that, then...
I'm not prepared for that. As I say, I could see saying we feel that the process followed by city council was flawed and illegal, and we think that something should be done about it, and leave it at that. As far as this, again, just my own personal opinion, is until I either get more information from Old Town, Chinatown, that area, whether it's their business association or neighborhood association, I can't see endorsing this, and they haven't. If they've taken a neutral position, then so will I.
Right, so, well, I don't say that they're taking a neutral position, at least that's not according to Peggy. But the issue that certainly Tracy raises and that I hear Peggy raising is not that, well, I think this is how Old Town, Chinatown should handle their development issues. What I hear both of them saying is, if the Landmarks Commission makes a ruling, it should not be overturned by the city council without due process. And it shouldn't be, something shouldn't be sort of snuck in at the last minute to greatly increase the heights.
Double it.
Before it's, without the opportunity of the public to comment on that. So I don't see the issue at stake as really being, well, we don't like the way Old Town is handling their own affairs, we're going to meddle in them. Daniel?
Yeah, I have a question without, that I'm wondering if we could focus our opposition to it based on externalities, how this could be affecting us directly in Goose Hollow, not the legal interconnectiveness, but the ecological, like how this could impact, let's say, the Vista Bridge view corridor, or how this could affect the heat island effect. There was a major article by a PSU professor in urban studies in and I think the New York Times was, and also that we could be affected also not only by the heat island effect, but that could have impact on air quality in our neighborhood and in community, or a whole variety of things.
Can I comment on that? Old Town mentioned that Goose Hollow has many development projects going on right now all around us. And so it is possible, and I'm sure Goose Hollow Board has many years of experience with providing feedback in terms of the building development. Am I correct? So what is your take on that with the development that's going on in Goose Hollow? Do you feel that it has been done in a way that the people's voices were heard?
No, not especially.
It all depends on the project. Just as a brief update, if you look at the press blocks, where they're going up eventually in their apartment building, 255 feet. We fought that. We couldn't fight it on height because the city in the 90s approved, I think, 300 or 325 feet. And they told us at 255 we should be grateful. However, in the surrounding area, on Yan Hill, all those adjoining streets, there's been a lot of building done, and they're all under 100 feet, whether they're 6, and they can make money at it. The other one would be Artist Repertory Theater, which has sold half their property to go up 219 feet, and they're breaking ground, I believe, this winter. You know, we try to fight the good fight. We lose a lot more than we win. However, it seems that in the hollow itself, with a lot of the new development, they are keeping it, you know, between 80 and 120 feet. We would like everything, obviously, to be about 100 at a maximum. But a lot of these developers are able to go forward, whether they're offering subsidized housing or not, and can still make a profit.
Well, I think... Can you hear me?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, I kind of feel we need to come up with some way of supporting this without committing ourselves to something we're not sure of. So I would suggest a couple of things. First of all, the field meeting is the 20th, right? The next meeting is October 18th. We have time to receive some kind of email from Chinatown, Old Town, welcoming our support for this. if we get that, I'd feel a lot more comfortable. And if the motion itself, instead of saying participated in the amicus brief, which we haven't really seen, and we only have a loose idea of what it's about, would be something like support the brief, then I would feel more comfortable with it, because I'd like to be able to support it. But I don't want to get involved in something, I don't think we should get involved in something we're not sure about, and I think we need that invitation, and if we have time, and if we can wrap all this up, I think we could simply table this motion, or, ask Roger whether it is possible. But we table the motion with a friendly amendment to modify that word participate, and include some kind of a condition or annotation that we'd like to receive an invitation of some kind to support them, or support this appeal. Right?
Yeah. So actually,
can we do that?
To be clear, there are actually two pieces to this, and this is where it gets a little bit complicated, just so everybody understands. The LUBA turned down the height, one of the two pieces, and it's spelled out in the letter. But LUBA ratified in other words, they remanded back to the city the spot zoning, essentially. But they ratified the public process that was followed. And so what Restore Oregon is doing is supporting the LUBA ruling on the remand and appealing the LUBA ruling on the public involvement process, because they see that as a very dangerous precedent that could open the door to this kind of last-minute revision that Tracy talked about. So there are actually two pieces to this, and it is complex. And maybe we do need to get some language that we can look at, and also some information from Old Town Chinatown before we sign in blood, as it were.
So can I get back in? So, so can we, I'd like to make a motion to table this on the basis of asking and getting some kind of request from Chinatown downtown saying, yes, we'd like you to support this. Change the word from participate to, I think, support. So I'm going to make the motion now. And that we have everything ready to go by the October 18th meeting, so that really all we need to do is have a brief discussion and sign it and let it go, and have, deliver it on Friday the 19th.
So, sorry, excuse me, sorry about my reach, but, so motion to...
Point of order?
Yeah.
You were talking about two different things. One is to a friendly amendment to the motion, and the other is to table the motion, and they're contradictory. So we either table the motion, or we make a friendly amendment to the motion as given.
Okay, yeah.
So what I'd like to...
I think I used the word friendly. So let's talk about a friendly amendment to that one word, and to table this.
May I suggest something?
You would just move to table, and then we take a vote, all right?
Okay.
With or without discussion.
May I suggest something before you do that? You could do a friendly amendment to simply change the language here to say, motion to conditionally support the Restore Oregon appeal, blah, 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 pending further information, something like that, Cal?
Okay, where would the conditionally go?
I object to that. If you can't get into specificity and just want to do something general, then let's pass, withdraw the motion, and it can be brought forward next month after we have hopefully individuals from that neighborhood to come to speak to us.
But do we know for a fact that that's not going to be too late? Because it sounded to me like this was a very time-sensitive.
No, it said 10/28, and we're meeting on the, whatever it is, the 17th. So we would have enough, we've done these things in the past, where we've only had 48, 72, 96 hours to get a letter out. So I think that is possible.
Well, I think the threshold question is the neighborhood support a prerequisite for all of us? You know, that is what we're talking about. Because if it is, then we should table the motion and just ask the neighborhood, do you support it?
More information, gathering more information.
But it would be helpful also to have some sign from the board of what our sense is towards this motion, so that Tracy or whoever it is can go to Peggy and work with her in good faith, and not have Peggy say, you guys are.
If we're given,
not
if
gonna be
we're
helpful.
given particulars, whether it's by Peggy or from somebody from their neighborhood or business association, whether it's via email to our board or individuals on our board, or if they were to come to our meeting next month, or our livability meeting as an example, or even planning meeting, they'll have an ample opportunity for us to discuss this and digest it. I just think, you know, from my mind, that, you know, we need more specificity. The one thing that we know is that the process has been violated.
Yes.
What a surprise in this city. It never happens, does it? So,
Right, and I guess my concern, I don't want to editorialize too much here as the chair, but is that, you know, what Tiffany says is very important. They need development there. And what I object to that's happening in this city is that it's being characterized as either or. Either you get bad development crammed down your throat, or you get no development. And I insist, as somebody who works in this field, that we can have good development that everybody buys into. That's a win-win. And I hope that this board will be very clearly on the record that way, and not sort of back off from something that seems like, you know, it's not, we're not being bold in that.
I have
in
not
that way.
seen this board not take bold action in the past. It really comes down to getting more information from my perspective. And again, I'm speaking as, you know, as an individual. If you feel that you want to go forward with this motion, so be it. Let's vote it up or down. We got other things to deal with.
Well, I think we can unite behind a consensus direction here, but I'm just wondering if there's something short of, you know, we're just going to back off and not touch this because we don't have enough information. Daniel?
While we're on the concept of good development and win-win, and the National Geographic travel-related issue has a whole article on Portland and how Portland is a great place to feel local, or importance local, Portland and local. And one of the things that was a good model was the new Nines Hotel in Pioneer Square, which they wrote about, and I saw that that's actually a good model for, I think, a lot of things in Chinatown. First of all, they saved that beautiful historic building, but I also learned that the it's now not only being used as an active hotel, but it's a completely environmentally sustainable building. So having an approach to both that saving buildings in a way that they can still be used, lived in, worked in, and also be retrofitted in such a way so they can have environmental sustainable technology.
Yeah.
That's a good model.
We don't want too many more people coming to Portland if we can. Roger.
Yeah. I'd just like to make a suggestion on how to move forward. My sense is that the best thing would be to table this, to make a motion table. If we pass, and then if it's passed, to have a second motion to say that we are supportive of the issues that are raised, especially the process issues and especially the height issues, and that we, and even as part of that motion, say that we will act upon it at the next meeting when we have more information.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to see, is if we can get language like that, yeah.
Could I also state that Old Town, Chinatown's neighborhood associations, that they would love for another neighborhood to reach out to understand their situation, and they're willing to give up an hour of their time to come to us with their their president of their association, as well as their land use chair, and also most likely invite the Pearl District too, because they are going through a lot of changes as well. And not like Old Town Chinatown though. They do want to make clear that it's a different situation entirely. So.
Invite them for next month, tell them they get a half hour, it'll still take an hour.
Or we could send a few of our board members to them and maybe walk the area and talk to them about those actual blocks. Sometimes it's helpful to actually see where the development will take place, what the situation looks like, how it will impact, what kind of affordable housing will be there as well, get the bigger picture, and then see how they will preserve the history and the culture in those blocks, because there's actually, I think, 2 different areas they're referring to, right? They're pro a certain area. I like I said, it's complex. I'd like to walk it first.
But I also don't think we need to get involved to your point, Tiffany, I don't think we should get too involved in their prerogatives about how they see their own developments happening. I think our focus really should be on the process and on the precedents that are going to affect us if they stand. And we can do that without meddling in their business too much.
But if we support Restore Oregon, that might kind of not see the bigger picture of Old Town Chinatown, then we may be kind of hindering them as well. So I agree with the public process. We know what has been violated, but we also know every area has its own struggles. So we need to put those together. Maybe we do 2 different separate things, and maybe not necessarily the board go down, maybe not to, we just need to figure out why they're not aligning completely with Restore Oregon.
So I
Cal,
believe there's a motion on the floor, which is my motion, which hasn't been seconded.
So give me your motion.
I'm going to try to clarify it. So first of all, I'd like to ask for a friendly amendment to change the word participate to support. And that would require the person making the motion and the seconder, I think, to agree to that friendly amendment.
So you're saying change participate
Yeah, so I'm doing 2 things here. One is to change participate to support.
Support the emphasis.
Yeah, so who made the motion on this one? The original motion was it Sharon?
Yes.
You asked the person who made the motion.
Well, I can't remember who it was that made the
Sharon,
motion.
Sharon.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
GHFL will support the
And you're in agreement with this, Sherry?
I don't know. I'm thinking about it.
So do you think, Cal, that you say support the amicus brief, and
We
you
haven't
want to
seen
put
the
other language in there
amicus
about?
brief, so saying that to participate in it, I think is not appropriate. So by saying support, I think that makes me certainly more comfortable, and maybe other people.
Support would be
And
fine.
then something along the lines of we
No,
direct the president to get further information or something like
Well,
that.
I'm just suggesting that as a friendly amendment, and then I'm going to make my motion, if you want to hear my whole plan here, to table it. I'm going to need a second, and I'm going to suggest that either 1 or 2 other follow-on motions be made, hopefully passed, to support the general principle of what this is about, and to invite Chinatown to reach out to us so that we know that they are interested in having us do this. And then we can untable it, take it off the table at the October 18th meeting and get on with it. Right?
But I think, go ahead, Roger.
So I need a second to put it.
But before we do
You
that,
haven't made a
Roger?
motion. You were going to ask her friend if she would accept her friend.
Well, first, I haven't heard that yet. But
I'm not sure what one of the things I keep going back to is the fact that the city council just performed this illegal thing, and I understand
okay,
that.
then I withdraw my friendly amendment, because I'm not getting a friendly agreement. And I therefore
Poor Cal.
table this motion. I'm going to move to table this motion, and I'm asking for a second.
I will second that.
So we have to vote.
But we have discussion.
Before we, let me just be clear what you're actually proposing. Cal, you said that you would do a friendly amendment and a table? You can't do both.
I asked for a friendly amendment to change one word. I did not get support for that. Therefore, I re-raised my motion to table, and it was seconded by Roger. I think that's where we are, and now we're in discussion.
Okay. I think I can go ahead and support.
The simplest way to proceed is to table, to vote on tabling the motion, because the language we would change when it would come up before the board at the point that we would be voting for it, or voting it up or down. Yes? You follow me so far? And then, once that is done, if all that is done, then someone makes a motion in line with supporting, in principle, everything that's proposed, but we wait upon events.
So table it first and then do another motion that
Yes,
expresses our
that seems-
sentiment. Yeah, okay, we can do that. Yeah. All right, so do you second that?
I seconded his.
Okay, so Cal makes the motion to table, and Roger seconds. Okay, any other discussion before we vote on the tabling of the motion? Seeing none, let's call the vote. All in favor of tabling the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And let's see, Sherry, are you going to vote no?
Yeah.
Okay, Sherry votes no. Andrea votes no? Or abstain? Okay. Sherry, 7, yay. Sherry, no.
Now the floor is open for your vote.
Okay, now you can do a motion to express the sentiment of the board.
Okay, well, so what? A motion to reach out to Chinatown to ask for their endorsement or support for our proposed motion, this one.
Our proposed joining of the amicus
They could
brief,
see,
right?
we could send them a draft motion.
Do we want to say something about the sentiment of the board?
That needs a second.
Could I reword your motion?
Well, friendly amendment.
I would move that this board, in principle, approves the matters of concern that are brought before us by Tracy Prince and Peggy Moretti, and that we would seek information from Old Town Chinatown Neighborhood Association and other interested parties in preparation for action at subsequent board meeting. End of motion.
So how about we agree in principle with the concerns brought before us. And how would you word the rest of that?
I'm sorry, still say that. We
agree.
The board approves the principles, approves in principle the concerns raised before us by Tracy Prince and Peggy Moretti.
By Restore Oregon, let's just say.
But wishes to defer action on joining the Luma suit.
Right.
Until you receive further information from Old Town Chinatown Neighborhood Association and any other interested parties.
So I'd like to thank Roger for that complete rewrite of my motion. I don't feel like I really own it, but I'd like it.
Well, let me read it back to you. Motion to reach out to Chinatown, Old Town Chinatown for their support for our proposed joining of the amicus brief of Restore Oregon. The board agrees in principle with the concern raised before us by Restore Oregon, but defer action until we receive further information from Old Town Chinatown Neighborhood Association and other interested parties. Okay.
Could I just make a little fine tune?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Tiffany?
Other interested parties, would that be what Roger mentioned, the brief, the actual description of the brief, right? You said it's a blanket brief, right? The amicus brief, you said it was a blanket, we didn't know information about that. How do we get that information, the amicus brief?
Well, that will kind of be dependent upon what happens next time.
Okay.
I still have a problem of approving our joining the brief when I haven't seen the brief.
I agree, so can we put that in there too? Because we need to find out how to get that information. I don't know if, does Old Town, Chinatown have that, or is that amicus?
I think though we're not going to take action till, the motion's kind of loaded as it is.
Sorry.
We're not going to take action till the October meeting. And at that point, whether or not we have a brief to look at, then we would take action. If we had a brief to look at, we could act. If we didn't have a brief to look at, then we'd have to discuss whether or not we go forward.
Thank you so much for that clarification.
So the way this works, as I understand it, again, I'm not a lawyer either, but is that if we join the amicus brief, we write our own piece of it and say, this is what we think, that we're literally, we're friend of the court. We're writing a friendly document that is supporting the appeal. So we need to know exactly what's in the appeal, and we need to know what we're going to write. So I think that needs to be in a motion that we consider at the next meeting.
It seems to me Liz could
I was
inform
going
the
to ask,
conversation.
it's exactly what I was going to ask Liz. You're our,
I am a lawyer.
yeah, she's a lawyer. She's modest, she's a judge too.
And I don't agree that we have to write part of the brief. We could just sign on as amicus. But we need to either know what's in the brief, or we have to say, these are the only principles that we're willing to sign on for.
Right. We're basically selecting what we want to agree with, whether we write that or however we do that, okay, so Cal, you put that motion forward, right?
I sort of put it forward.
Oh, yeah, you could have the motion.
So I read it. Is there a second?
I second it.
And Eric seconds.
I'd like to get home tonight if we could.
Yeah, we still have 396 to discuss, although that's not so much to vote on there. Any further discussion before we take a vote on the motion?
Well, the only thing I'm concerned about is the fact that, standing up for the way that this whole process was done, which was just horrible. It's a sham, and that alone sets a very dangerous precedent. And I just don't know how that's going to be addressed. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just very uncomfortable with it.
I think we all want to do that. I think it's just, we feel like there's some pieces that need to be put on the table before we move forward, right? Okay, shall we call the motion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Roger, are you 4?
I have my hand up, yeah.
And Cal, 6? Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7.
Abstain.
No? Abstain? Abstain. Okay, 7. Yay. 2 abstain. Okay, that's motion passes, and I think that's it for that issue. So let's move on. It's now 8:15. We want to move on through the reports and all that. But the first thing we need to talk about is the 3.96 code update. Roger, do you want to comment on that?
I'll start, but this is an issue that a lot of other people can chime in on. First of all, I'm sure everybody's pretty much I hope, followed some of the media coverage. Oh, well, let me back up. The 3.96 matter is the attempted changes to the existing 3.96 city code, which is what governs the neighborhood system in Portland. And if you have followed the press coverage, local has tried to take the neighborhood associations out of the code and change the language of the code via their handpicked committee to what so far is more like a mission statement than code, than law. Two important developments, pieces, were first, the article in the Oregonian citing revealed records that documented local staff attitudes towards the neighborhood associations. That was what I would call personally a game changer. Yet a second game changer, I believe, was the Wednesday Willamette Week article that I hope most of you read, where Commissioner Daly attacked her peers on city council, especially Amanda Fritz. It's hard to see why she would do that, but she did. Now there has been for some time, and Michael has been part of this group, as have I, a Code 3.96 sort of committee of neighborhood association people who have been meeting to strategize on how to deal with this and to go forward. And they have put together, and I will quote a few of them, some talking points. And not everybody necessarily agrees on all of the talking points, but they are things that I could put out there that are important for members of neighborhood associations or just plain ordinary citizens to cite in their testimony before city council. And when I say before city council, I don't necessarily mean in person, but letters, emails, phone calls. A lot of the code committee people, especially those from the east side, say that phone calls are really the best thing to do as far as reaching the commissioners. And the points, the talking points, and I will just go through a few of them, is, first of all, that we agree that we need to add more voices and seats at the table of civic engagement. Secondly, that the 216 auditors report was a roadmap on how to institutionalize more inclusivity and diversity in Portland, and that the Code Committee did not follow that roadmap. Thirdly, that the local committee went in the wrong direction, recommended by the auditor, because they attempted to dismantle the existing neighborhood association system, and therefore no one has a seat at the table that is protected by the city code. Or, and I already mentioned this, what is actually passed by their committee is aspirational language. What's missing are the nuts and bolts definitions and the direction the code needs to guarantee a seat at the table for other groups and for neighborhood associations. And if, and this goes back to what we were just talking about with Old Town Chinatown, the committee did not comply with the city's public involvement principles and involve neighborhood associations as key stakeholders. It's required by the code. So these are things that you can contact the council about directly, that any citizen can. And there are important dates for you to realize. One is that on October 2nd, there's going to be council testimony by 4 of the members, most of them from the east side, with one from the southwest, to talk to city council about changing the code in line with what the auditor originally called for. And I don't know the times of day that these people are going to be talking, but a show of support at City Council is something that would be very helpful. And then 2 more will be testifying on October 23rd before City Council. And again, a show of support is good. And ultimately, if this date holds on November 14th from 5 to 8 p.m., will be the council hearing on the code change. Now, this date may change because of everything that's going on. But this is where you show up and you sign up and you testify. And that's enough for me. I'll leave it at that.
So I have
Michael,
some,
you can-
well, I have some breaking news, as they say. This is a story that just ran in Willamette Week an hour ago, 2 hours ago. City Commissioner Chloe Udaley opens the door to changing the neighborhood association proposal. And it says, she essentially promised to talk with her colleagues and community members before debuting a new version of the plan for the Office of Civic and Community Life, which oversees neighborhoods. That may signal an overhaul of the proposal, which appears necessary since she has no other votes on the City Commission for the proposed ordinance. So I think the current state of play is very confused at the moment. I think her proposal is in trouble, that much is clear.
I think so.
And I think there are many people who have come out and expressed very great concerns, including the League of Women Voters. The Oregonian itself, the editorial board, wrote an editorial saying this is not the right way to go forward. A lot of other, sort of influential voices have gone on record saying this is going in the wrong direction. But the key question is, how are we recognizing what the neighborhood association system is and how it needs to be strengthened, how it needs to go back to the auditor's report, which she didn't call for marginalizing the neighborhood association system. She called for reforming it and strengthening it and clarifying roles and making it more accountable and more effective. And we're all for that, right, on this board. I think I speak for everybody on this board. So there's a win-win here, and I think we ought to be champions of that as we are of good development and other things. At the same time say, this is not the right way forward. You're creating a divisive atmosphere, an atmosphere of people broken up into identity politics instead of saying, look, let's find ways to really empower all people, including those who have been excluded. And it doesn't empower them to just give them a tokenistic seat at the table. They need real power, which they get from neighborhood associations and from other channels. So I don't know that we need to take any action on this other than just be aware of it, right?
No, I don't think so. We have actually taken the lead, starting shortly after the auditor's report, sending letters to City Council about the process. Now, it may be that at our next meeting, we want to consider yet another letter.
Yeah, and of course, we want to be in a position to testify, so maybe the board should authorize the president or whoever's going to do that before that happens.
Yes, I think sending for the president to send something out to the membership about the upcoming testimony, the 3 I've mentioned, and especially the November hearing before City Council, if that date holds, I think that would be very appropriate action.
Well, that we could do now. Do you think, is that something we want to do? Because we can certainly make the membership aware of, if they aren't already, of what the board has already said on the record. Yes. And simply say, you have an opportunity to testify, whatever your opinion is, but here's what the board has said. And do we, account?
Just to ask Roger, will you post that item you just read on the website and attached to the minutes of this month's minutes?
I think we can
Are you
put
okay
it.
with that?
We can put the dates in a minute, is that what you, the dates in
Well,
a minute?
what you just read could,
Oh, I just put.
could go in the minutes. You want that or not?
I just put the, that was just my notes to myself.
Well, but could we put it up? Are we okay with that? I'm okay with it.
Well, if it's in the minutes, it doesn't necessarily get read by very many people. I think what you were suggesting,
Yeah,
Roger,
letter
is send it
from
out
the
to the membership.
Oh, sure. We should
Through
have
the
those.
GHFL
I have that too,
communications.
but I don't
Yeah.
know if it's on next
Just
month.
say, well, once we know when that date is, we can do that,
Say
right?
it's okay.
Also, if you go to our website, I believe, when it gives all these breakdowns, not only for minutes, it does have, I think, several of the letters that we've written that are highlighted.
Yeah.
So, people can look. The only two other things I just wanted to add. One, allegedly, the meeting at City Council will be the beginning of November. That is not etched in stone. So we will have to wait and see. From articles that I've read, it seems that right now Udaly has a little bit of an uphill battle.
Mhm.
And so-
No votes. other than
Well,
our
I
own.
mean, and so we'll have to remain to see what happens. The other thing is I would like to thank Alan for the work that he's done in the Northwest Executive. And just spell my last name correctly, okay?
Can I point out to the crowd who has not seen last month's edition of Northwest Examiners, he goes into small detail about the Code 396 change, neighborhood associations, and I thank you for that.
Yeah.
Move to our neighborhood so we can put you on the board.
That's right,
If you're
Alan.
not busy enough.
So do we
Well,
want
one
to,
more thing while we're on the subject of Mr. Classic. Some of you went to the film on James Jacobs' fight for the city, which is at the Northwest Cultural.
and that's coming up.
There's going to be
Alan.
another showing and another panel on the east side.
Right.
At the Mennonite Church on,
October 18th, Friday night.
October 18th, Friday night,
so,
at the Mennonite Church on the east side, if anybody is able to go to that. It's a fantastic film. We did it last year, and we had a great panel discussion afterwards. It's amazing how many of these issues are happening right here.
So if you missed
that
that
were
one,
happening
go to this
in New York back then. Yeah. But do we want to do a board action to authorize the release of this? I mean, I guess the president could do it anyway, or the communication people, right?
I move that we authorize the president to reach out to the membership with a letter outlining the board's previous positions on the reform of local deficiencies in process, etc., to apprise them of opportunities to give their input to city council.
Second.
Okay, I'm going to read the motion. Move to authorize the president to reach out to the membership with a letter outlining the board's previous position on the reform of OCL, or Office of Community Life, and the deficiencies of the process, and advising of opportunities to testify before council. Right?
Good. Well, not only testify, but to send correspondence, whether it's, an email or a letter or something.
Well, testify, if you send it in as testimony, so, yeah, we could. Who seconded that? Cal?
Cal did.
Any discussion?
Sounds
No?
good.
Call the motion. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 unanimous. Great, okay. Moving on. And Roger, you had an Articles of Incorporation update?
Yes, no, I wanted to suggest, we have the best webpage in the city, thanks to Scott, who does such wonderful work. We are having elections in November, and we should have the most current bylaws and articles of incorporation on our website. And currently, the link to the bylaws is to an older version. We're missing the change we made in April, where we passed an amendment to 3.4, and that's crucial because it says that the election requires a majority vote of the membership present. And also, the latest version of the Article of Incorporation is not there. Instead, we have the old articles and the link to proposed and past amendments from the 2015 annual meeting. The board in the subsequent meeting approved restating the articles and posting them in that fashion. They're easier to comprehend that way. The importance here is that tells us what the requirements for membership are. And these are, the new articles are posted on the Secretary of State's database in that fashion with a receipt date. So they are definitely current. That's all about that. We need to bring those up to date. But I did notice, when I checked the Secretary of State's website, and you were president at this time, and you probably didn't notice, but we had an administrative dissolution.
We didn't file our 1031, or well, not 1031, CT 31, whatever it is.
Yeah, it happened on the 14th of June in 2018. And then there was a renewal the subsequent month. The reason I was wondering about that, did you get notified by
There would have been the secretary at the time, whoever that was, right?
I think as the president, you would have been probably notified, but I just wondered because I'm not clear about the legal situation.
I don't know the issue on that. I had that happen with my S-Corp when I was out of the country, and it was simply, I didn't file it on time, and it was administratively dissolved, and then you just have to reinstate it and pay a penalty of $10, $50. Yeah. And so it's a fairly straightforward thing, but I wasn't aware that that happened, no.
Yeah, I didn't think you probably were, because I wondered about the legal implications. If you're administratively dissolved, does that mean during that period of time, any action you took is not valid? And the Secretary of State could not help me. They said that that would have to be something that DOJ would take care of, would weigh in on.
Maybe Liz knows the answer to this, but I think, you're still an association whether you're recognized as a corporation by the state or not, so you can continue doing business, I would think, and then once you're reinstated as a corporation, you can say, yes, this is still valid for the corporation, right?
But I think the point is we want to get reinstated as soon as possible.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I would think that's no harm, no foul, but no, I wasn't aware of that.
A little over a month later.
Yeah, it's important to stay on top of these things. Okay, let's move on. So we have the minutes to approve, and I would ask those who have written the minutes to speak if they have any comments on those, or anyone who has questions can direct them to them, and we'll start with the July 2019.
Okay, no, I have one on the 8/14.
You did the special
Yeah, on
meeting?
the July minutes, I got 2 comments and I incorporated both comments.
Okay. They're in there already? Okay.
Yeah.
So July, I don't think there's any issue.
So there's no
I have a
issue,
couple of
okay.
concerns. I don't know whether we need to vote on July 1st and then go to.
Oh, well, let's do that.
Okay.
Okay. Does somebody want to move to approve the July minutes?
Yeah, I move to approve the July minutes.
So Eric moves to approve. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second them. I can.
Okay. Liz?
And I want to thank Liz for doing a wonderful job.
comment.
Yeah.
Madam Secretary.
Anybody who does minutes for this group, as I'm typing up the minutes, should be appreciated for that. Any comments before we vote on that? Let's call a motion. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, unanimous. Now, the special meeting in August.
Right, I sent out an email a few days ago stating that in the draft minutes that we received, it was put forward the issue of NWNW providing our insurance, which is the reason they were included on the poster. That was not brought up in any way, shape, or form at the meeting on the 14th. We got a letter, I believe it was from Tracy, a few days later when she did an investigation saying NWNW is paying our insurance. If that's the case, to me, the proper venue for that would be at tonight's meeting. If anybody wants to correct the record, add that to the record. But to me, that sentence or two should be struck from the minutes because it never occurred.
So here's, first of all, which copy should we look at?
If you look at the draft, and it was the draft that was sent out by
Eric, I'm sorry for interrupting since I'm not on the board, but I reformatted those minutes, and the one that Roger's looking at is formatted with logo and letterhead and that type of thing, and it has that statement about the insurance crossed out. Roger, do you see that on yours?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Okay, so
It's still
you in
included,
advance.
it's still included in the minutes, it's just got a strike through it. And just so you know, if you want to include, keep that strike through or completely eliminate it, I just wanted to make sure that you knew that that statement was in Tiffany's minutes.
Okay.
And that the strike through were your corrections or.
Right, so I would move or suggest that that just be physically taken out since it didn't occur. And aside from that, the rest of the minutes, from my perspective, are correct. That was the only concern that I had.
So the question, the
What is
line
your
I see
name? Thank
struck.
you so much.
May I go
Scott,
ahead?
I've never met you before. Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you, this is great.
So, just clarification, the line that I see crossed out says NWNW logo. Which is the line you're talking about?
What's
The
that?
one that's true. There's a
Is that
line
line?
through it?
Is that the line you're talking about? Okay.
Yes.
So, and is that line, and is this other version, which version is going to go up on the website?
The one that you have in your left hand is the one that's currently posted on the website.
This one? Okay. And so you're going to get rid of the yellow and the strikeout, or are you going to leave it like this?
No, that's for you two
I
guys to
would, I would
decide.
suggest,
That's
since
for you
it
guys
does
to
not
decide.
occur, that we take out where it says NWNW logo will stay on poster since the NWNW is now providing insurance free of charge. That never occurred at the meeting, so that should be struck. If someone wants to bring up when they talk about Goose Hollow Days, to say that our insurance is now being provided by NWNW and put that in the record, that's fine by me. It's just that it never occurred at that particular meeting.
Yeah. Okay, so let's include that in the motion. Who's making the motion to approve the minutes?
Well, I made the,
Whoever moves to approve the minutes can say with that. take it
well,
out.
okay, I make a motion that we approve the minutes by striking that one particular sentence.
Okay, do we have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Sherry seconds. Hold a second.
I believe Roger has something he'd like to add.
Roger?
I have a pedantic amendment.
So basically, just an amendment.
Yes, which is, it should be Secretary Pro Tem, unless, of course, you be our secretary, which we would all love.
I guess I'm Secretary Pro Tem and
Well, no,
Chair
I
Pro
meant
Tem.
on the text, that Tiffany was Secretary
Tiffany was
Pro Tem
really pro
on that day.
Tiffany, yeah.
That's all.
She blamed me for putting it that way.
Yeah, Secretary
Okay,
Pro Tem,
that's fine.
yeah.
That's all I have. Let's
Okay,
move forward.
any other discussion? Okay, call the motion. All in favor of approving the minutes with those two changes? You guys want to abstain? Okay. Wait a minute, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 2 abstain.
No, it's, it's 9 o'clock.
You guys weren't there. Okay, now I'm going to move to the treasurer's report, or interim treasurer's report, as the case may be. And we have, this is hot off the bank account, $5,124.66 in the savings account. We had a $4,874 deposit on the 14th. Then we have $1,501 in the business checking account. I am going to write a check to Melody Hughes for her expenses, which is about $300 all told. Then we just got the check from the Timbers for $2,500, so I'll deposit that as well. Anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Okay, so why is the check this year from the Timbers lower than last year? Because last year they donated $3,500, which was the,
Does anybody know
amount
the
for
answer to
community
that?
picnic, in lieu of the community picnic, and this year, so does that mean they're going to give an extra $1,000 for that?
I don't know the answer to that, but
I
there
think-
was, I vaguely remember there was some quid pro
Yeah,
quo. They're going to still do offer something to us.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember? anybody?
No, I'm under the understanding that when the Timbers were approached by the Goose Holidays Committee, I don't know which particular individual, to talk about it, they said they'd give us $2,500 and that was accepted. So when we did have our special meeting, it was brought up that perhaps they would ask for an additional $1,000. I don't know whether they were or weren't. I would be very surprised if it would have been given. But the reality is they offered $2,500 and the Goose Holidays Committee accepted it. So that's the reality.
They accepted it without questioning, like, why $1,000 less?
Again, no one, I don't want to get into the weeds on this or down a rabbit hole. Information.
Well,
was-
we're going to talk about Goose Holidays
Okay.
also.
Well,
That's a
no, I'm
separate
just
issue.
saying
Yeah.
that a lot of information was offered to the committee that was never taken by the committee prior to them getting in touch with the Timbers. But that is the reality, and so let's just move on.
Yeah. Right, okay, so does somebody want to move to approve the treasurer's report?
I move to approve the treasurer's
Eric
report.
moves to approve, a second?
I'll second. I'm invested in what somebody else wants to say.
Tiffany, okay, Tiffany seconds, we'll just have it.
Small for the board.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
So, Dr. Mahatma.
Yes, Dr.
I noticed in the agenda that the election, work of the election committee is not shown. Can we insert that somewhere?
Yeah, just a second. Good point. Okay, let's try to move through the committee reports as quickly as possible since it's about 15 minutes till 9. And Scott, do you have anything on communications?
Now, we're continuing to send out notices of the events happening in Goose Hollow. And Roger, I'm glad you reminded me. I thought I posted the updated bylaws and updated articles of Corporation. So I'll go ahead and check to see if I have the latest copies.
Oh, that's fine. I just checked everything today.
No, I'm
And
glad-
I checked
I'm glad you did. For some reason, I thought in my mind that I posted the update.
No
So I'll go
problem.
ahead and-
Like I said, we have the best webpage in the city of Portland. So this is just, no, I realize it's not just webpage, okay, website.
So I think that's it. I don't think there's anything more to report on the communications part.
So, safety, parking, and transportation, Tiffany, we met in August, and then we're going to meet again in October.
Yes, the next one is October 16th at Legends, and I'll briefly go over what topics we'll be addressing. One is for all of you all in Goose Hollow, the navigation team, the city's navigation team is back with us again. If you all remember them from springtime, they did a pilot program over off of 14th and Montgomery. Well, they're back over in Goose Hollow, and they're focusing on the 405 freeway because we had a resurgence of a lot of encampments, trash, and the navigation team, if you guys aren't aware, offer social services, daily social services to all the campers out there, to that helping hand up to get them off of the street. So if you, it started last Tuesday, so I'd like to see good efforts come from that. And so I'll probably tell you at the safety meeting what happened with the navigation team. And then also too, recently this month, jail bed budget cuts from the Oregon legislators has been felt at Multnomah County level. If you all have been watching the news, $7.7 million cuts. The Multnomah County put in an emergency contingency fund. I think it was $2 million. I don't quote me. Either way, this is a big issue for all of us because this is the third event this year that directly affects crime safety, livability, public safety. With the earlier this year, the DA budget cuts, and then you had your 100 worst offenders revolving door, the crisis with the problem with the recogs, where they're working with the jail system, and then of course no jail bed funding, and this affects community probation services that are offered to our community. So that will be discussed then. And then there is going to be on October 24th a police appreciation event over at the Multnomah Arts Center. Our fellow neighborhood association Swirl will be putting on that event. That's where we go and recognize the people on the front lines, the cops and their families. And that's a good time if you have any questions where you can have a Q&A, talk to the local central precinct that supports your neighborhood. And then also, one other thing we will be talking about on October 16th is Chloe Udeli's department, what do you call it, the Civic Life, excuse me. They're disbanding the Neighborhood Crime Prevention, and they're reorganizing it to be Neighbors Together. So I'd like to get a spokesperson to come from the city to explain to us what that means, because we're not sure yet. So in terms of crime and safety in neighborhoods. And then last of all, there is a newly formed PSAC group. It's a downtown public safety coalition, which I'm a part of, a leadership team. It's a newly formed group that used to be a part of City Hall, but we are now going private. We're no longer a public group, we're a private coalition. So I do have information about the West Side Public Safety Action Coalition if anybody's interested in it. Most importantly, this group of people downtown focuses, they're representative of the west side of the city to come together and explore collaborative ways to improve our safety here and livability for everyone in downtown as well as across Multnomah County. And the mission of PSAC is to act as a voice of the community to identify and evaluate community safety and livability concerns and advocate for and take effective action towards bringing about positive change for all of us. PSAC will interact with government, nonprofit, private, or other entities relevant to facilitate a successful implementation of its work. So if you have any questions, let me know. You can come to the next public safety, transportation, parking meeting on October 16th at Legends if you want to know about that.
Thank you.
I just want a quick question. What's the navigation team comprised of?
So the navigation team is a newly formed pilot program that goes all over Multnomah County. What it does is, instead of just going and cleaning up a homeless encampment, they take a slower process to clean up the trash, but also offer daily social services to these individuals to help them to get into a shelter or some kind of housing, or maybe some medical services they may need. They use the police as well and other agencies too, like Central City Concern and the CERT program. I mean, it's a small program, and we have yet to understand the full potential of it, because we were the first, Goose Hollow was the first location they used this pilot program on. You remember back in spring when they brought a portable trailer with toilets and lockers and needle system to us? Some of us in the room felt this situation very well. We went through it. So they were just up in North Portland, helping out North Portland, and they go to the east side, but sometimes with downtown it's a little bit more challenging with the population. So I'd like to see better results this time around, because we had minimal results the first go around.
Are there, follow-on question, are there any metrics that are visible or available?
I have meetings with Multnomah County, and that's one of our questions, is we'd like to work closer to them. This PSAC group's gonna work closer with the navigation team to see if we can get better results, because we do want to, everyone in the neighborhood wants to see people taking the hand up and getting off the street. I'm sure you guys see all the numbers out there, and you probably are well aware of it. So there's another, in addition to the navigation team, there's also the Portland Street Response. They're going to roll out that pilot program too. So with PSAC, we reach out and say, hey, can we help you in our neighborhood to see if we can make these programs a little bit more successful? Because without the public's participation, the programs aren't as successful. And we also want to know results too. We don't want just programs rolled out without results, and we're still seeing the people out there, so we're left wondering, hey, what can we do better the next time around? Tiffany, so, I'm sorry.
We have 8 minutes before 9 o'clock.
Okay, well, I was just, it's gonna be like a long, if I ask the question, it's gonna take too much time. I just.
Okay, yeah, come to the safety and parking safety and transportation committee meeting. Let's keep moving. So Stadium Oversight Committee, that's Jerry. He's not here. I don't think we have anything to say on that. What's that? Yeah, Jerry's great. He definitely is not speedy in his summations of these things, but he's great. We're honored to have him, and we're lucky to have him. Roger, bylaws, anything?
At the last meeting, we noted that the bylaws committee would be in advance, and so I think you can take that off of the.
Right. All right, I'll strike that from the list here.
After the election, and you can put it back on, but we're in advance.
Okay, great. Planning and zoning, Scott, is there anything to report on that?
We had a meeting early this month with Bill Cunningham.
Can you go up to the microphone?
So we had a meeting early this month with Bill Cunningham, who's a planner with the city, to talk about better housing by design. That was really the sole purpose of the meeting, is to hear what he had to say. The plan is locked in, so there's really nothing that we can do to change it. It's going to city council for a vote, so we can show up and make comments about it. The whole purpose of this is to slightly alter the proposed zoning code to take into consideration historic districts like Kings Hill. And the purpose is to reduce zoning on some parts of these historic districts to disincentivize the destruction of some of these historic residences. So you'll start seeing things like RM. They used to have RH, which is residential high density, and now they have RM2, RM3, RM4, which is residential multifamily. And the lower the number, the less density there is. And so there's going to be some parts of the Kings Hill that are going to be RM4, and there's going to be parts that are going to be RM3 and RM2. And so you can go ahead and check the website for Better Housing by Design to see the maps, to see what's going to be upzoned and downzoned.
I've written a personal letter of testimony on that. I think didn't we already as a board make our own position known that we oppose the rezoning. That we are advocating that Kings Hill be rezoned to RM3, right? Anyway, there's a number of other similar points I made on that.
Scott has got our letters all posted on the website.
Yeah, great. Moving right along. Neighbors West Northwest, anything to report there?
Yeah, I'll try to rush through this because we had 2 meetings since our last board meeting. On the July meeting, most concerns were about code change status, and we did come up with that with the September meeting. It was important that mention was made by President Shorey of increasing the board membership from other groups, supposedly in line with what Opal wanted. However, what was mentioned specifically was the Timbers Army, and it's likely that Nina, the industrial district, will come back. These are not exactly the communities of identity that Opal is talking about, and I know that given that the Timbers Army rep will probably be Stephon Lewis, Tracy will be even more delighted than I am to see that them coming back on board. But it will maintain and extend the current power structure of NWNW. That I think is the point that we have to wonder about. Now, in September, the first major item was a 5-page code of ethics and enforcement provisions there too, which Eric forwarded to all of you, so you can look at it there. The enforcement provisions themselves run to 2 pages, whereas the grievance procedure in the NWNW bylaws run to 2 paragraphs and a total of 9 lines. It is lacking, this is my opinion, in transparency, even more than the bylaws. There was essentially no discussion of the matter page by page, which is what I wish to raise. That didn't happen, and it was said that they had studied and discussed it extensively. This was supposedly during the period of my heart surgery and rehab. I checked with Eric, and they had actually never discussed it line by line, page by page, except in the committee. But in any case, it was true. And I suggest you read it. Doing it this way means that it could be passed by a majority of the quorum of the board instead of having to go through the bylaws procedures, which would have been passed by 2/3 of the members. I'm going to show my age here, but it reminds me of the HUAC hearings, those who are old enough, the House Un-American Activities Committee, and the loyalty oaths that they require. The rest of the meeting was devoted to the code change. In particular, the director and the receiver wanted them to advocate for 3 to 5 years of continued coalition funding when they went before, when they made their position as members of the city council. Opal's plan at the moment is to have all neighborhood coalitions to have the program funding be open to competitive bidding. This, in my view, is why, that's the reason, and that we suddenly found themselves opposing what Opal wanted to do, and we're going along for this past spring with everything that they had wanted. I'll stop there. It's more than I could.
Thank you, guys. See you. Thank you. Okay, Goose Hollow Days, and this is I know, a more detailed issue, and there are a lot of things happening, but Andrea, can you give us a quick update?
I'm not very, I don't know what to update on.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
We maybe need to wait on that until we get,
I have a small.
yeah, Cal?
Although I'm not really all that involved. But Friends of Goose Hollow had the first meeting that they've had in a long, long time on Saturday, and committed to giving Goose Hollow Days committee, or at least GHFL to support Goose Hollow $250.
Oh, that's nice.
$250. I was pushing for more, but that's all.
And I think probably the other thing that's needed is just volunteers to show up and help with, setting up and taking down and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's very important.
Does anyone know how many vendors signed up so far? How many booths there'll be, or just in general?
I do not
I
know.
want to say it's like 30 something, 30, 34, 30.
So that's more than the last time, wasn't it?
No, there were about 40.
Were there 40? So now there's...
But, yeah, we had a lot more meeting time.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a more ad hoc, effort to just sustain the momentum, and then maybe next year we can pick back up and do a more, larger scale event. Okay, election committee, anything to report on that, other than we need to get going on that, right, Roger?
I guess I'll report. There will be we sent a copy of the announcement to the Northwest, to Indemnity to run the Northwest Examiner for both October and November to meet the notice requirements. Scott, I think, has already posted that. I sent it to him, and I'm going to post it on the website. And then, as people who want to put their names forward for the board, there's 5 vacancies this year that are up for election. They will come to Cal and Andrea and myself to our committee, and we will meet in October to go over the candidates, and then, well, that's really it. Obviously, go run the election.
Go ahead. Remind everybody who's terming off and so forth, or who's... Oh,
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, there are 5, as I say, and right now, the 5 who are terming out are Eric, Liz, Michael, Jerry,
I'm turning off.
You're terming off,
Yes.
yes. And Cal, so that's the 5. And
Cal.
Cal cannot run for election.
Who's the 5th? Cal? Okay.
And Cal cannot run for election.
I've done my 6 years.
Yeah. Isn't Tracy terming out also as...
Pardon me?
Isn't Tracy also terming out as president?
No, Tracy terms out next
Next year, okay.
November, as would I, and as would, Sherry would in her 2nd term.
I'm in my 2nd term, I think.
Right. Questions?
I just need one thing from you, Roger. Usually there's 2 pieces of information we post on the website. One is the notice, which you've given me. The other one is a timeline, which I don't have yet.
Okay, I have a timeline.
Okay, so if you send that to me, I'll post it. Everything else is posted on there, including, a link of who to contact with the, your personal statement and all that other stuff.
I will send it to you next time I'm online, probably tomorrow, but certainly by the weekend. Okay, thanks for reminding me.
I might just like to add the comment that we're not supposed to solicit because we're on the committee, but you can solicit people to run for it.
Yes, you should certainly beat the bushes.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why that microphone's having some problems with the sound system not being either not loud enough or too loud. I'm not sure what's going on. Anyway, so the last item is just an announcement of coming events, and you can see that in your agendas. The Goose Hollow Cleanup is coming up September 21st, which is day after tomorrow. Heritage Tree Tour, October 4th, 5:30 p.m. Goose Hollow Days, of course, October 5th. Right after that ends at 4 p.m., we'll have the Goose Hollow History Slideshow here at the MAC. And then the next day, October 6th, we'll have Goose Hollow History Walking Tour. And then, Alan, one last time, the Jane Jacobs film is at the Mennonite Church. What day?
October 18th.
October 18th, 7 to...
6:30.
6:30 to 9:30, something like that.
And panel to follow.
Yeah, and panel to follow. So everybody, please join that. That's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of focus on the future of neighborhoods and the other challenges we have. Any other final comments, announcements?
I just got confirmation from Tracy that the Timbers, although it's not going to be a full picnic, they're hosting us for happy hour at the stadium, I guess in their new fancy room.
Right.
For happy hour before board meeting.
I remember there was something along those lines that was a quid pro quo, and it wasn't.
When do you have to get? When? Get ready?
Not yet, I think you tell them, yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
You tell them when Melanie's going to be in
Yeah.
town.
Are there other comments, announcements, going once, going twice?
Just please show up to the tree tour, Heritage Tree Tour. It's just, I would love to have as many people as possible.
Great. All right, adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Michael.